Good evening. This is the Meet the Candidates event for the upcoming 2022 Board of Elections vote. My name is Dan Christensen, and I have been asked by the PTSA to chair tonight's discussion. My wife and I are parents of 4 children in the district. The vote will be in approximately 2 weeks on Tuesday, the 17th of May. There will also be a barbecue dinner fundraiser that night for our district Odyssey of the Mind teams if you feel so inclined to support them. I'd like to thank the district for their support in this event tonight. They have graciously provided the room, facilities, support, and social media infrastructure to make tonight possible. With me are 3 excellent candidates, Pat Edwards, Jan Fortuna, and Brian Moritz, seeking your vote for the 2 open seats on the board. I'm also joined by 4 stellar students from Fairport High School who will be asking tonight's questions. The questions for our candidates tonight are compiled from the pool of questions submitted by the Fairport community over the past week. Over 60 questions were submitted. The questions you will hear tonight have been designed to capture the themes and topics of these questions. It's important to note that no one in district administration or the current board had any input in forming tonight's questions. As always, if there are any more individual questions you have for any of the candidates, they are all very willing to discuss with you over email or through their social media platforms, or just ask them. They're all very friendly. The evening will proceed as follows. The candidates will each be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves and provide an opening statement. The students will then take turns asking the candidates a series of 15 questions. Each candidate will be given a maximum of 90 seconds to answer each of those questions. To finish the meeting, each of the candidates will be allowed 1 minute for a closing statement. It is anticipated the event will last approximately 1.5 hours. With that, let's start. I'd now invite Pat Edwards, Jan Fortuna, and Brian Moritz to take a couple of minutes each, in that order, to introduce themselves to the community.
Thank you, Dan. For those of you who do not know me, I didn't have your child in school, I want to give you a little bit of background on why I'm here tonight. So I've been a teacher for more than 36 years, over 20 of those years right here in the Fairport Central School District, spent at Dudley Northside Schools. I earned my undergraduate degree at St. John Fisher College in elementary education and psychology. And I went to Nazareth, where I completed my Master of Education in elementary education with a concentration in early childhood education. I began my career teaching full-day kindergarten in the city of Rochester, and then after meeting my husband, Mert, I moved to the Southern Tier and taught for 13 years in 2 rural districts there, Arkport and Hornell. During those 13 years, we got married, had our 2 children, Zach and Kate, and in 1998, my husband was transferred back to Rochester, and we made our home in Fairport. Zach and Kate were enrolled at Northside School in 4th and 5th grade, and I began teaching there until my retirement in 2019. Since my retirement, I've been teaching at Fisher, my alma mater. I teach courses in literacy and social studies and to future elementary teachers. I also support them in their field placements in both the Rochester City School District and suburban districts. In addition, until I began this campaign for a seat on the Board of Education, I served as a substitute teacher here in Fairport and currently volunteering in the district as a one-on-one tutor. During my tenure in education, I have developed and taught in 2 multi-age programs, one in Hornell and the other here in Fairport. I've served on numerous curricular writing committees, been a building rep for our union, who so graciously endorsed all 3 candidates. Further, I served for many years on Fairport's Elementary Council and twice presented for the Society for Developmental Education in New Hampshire and Kentucky. It's my unceasing devotion to our students K-12, their families, our dedicated teachers and staff, and the Fairport community that brings me here today. Thank you.
Big green, right? Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jan Fortuna, and I'm just so pleased to be here with all of you. So thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedules. We know how busy spring is. My husband and I have strong ties to the Fairport area. My husband's a 1993 graduate of Fairport, and I myself am a 94 graduate of Penfield. We know this community and history very well. In fact, where we live, my parents and my childhood home is only just around the corner. I knew at an early age that I was destined to become a classroom teacher. I graduated from SUNY Fredonia and then Nazareth College. I went on to teach second and third grade at DeWitt Road Elementary up in Webster. Life took my husband and I to Boston in 2002, where I continued to teach for 6 years, fourth and fifth grades. We returned to the town of Fairport in 2008 with our baby girl, Katie. So I'm now realizing that no matter what, you're going to have a daughter, a little girl whose name is Katie on the board. And as Pat also has a daughter named Kate. We came back to Fairport to raise our family. It now includes our two daughters who are currently 6th and 8th graders at at Martha Brown. I was going to say that the reason my husband's not here tonight is because he and Katie are attending the mandatory Washington, D.C. trip meeting. And that obviously is much more important than seeing your mom at Meet the Candidates night. Presently, I'm an adjunct instructor at NAS in the School of Education. Since 2016, I've taught 8 different courses within the undergrad, early childhood, childhood inclusive ed program. My work also has included supervising our student teachers, advising them during their academic course selections, and working at our different site schools. I've had the wonderful opportunity to serve as the interim program director across the year 2018 and 2019. And I really attribute that experience to just kind of making me think more about leadership opportunities. But at the heart of my work at NAS is mentoring our next generation of classroom teachers and helping to prepare them for the most rewardable job of all, teaching. I am fortunate to have played an active role in my girls' lives. Early school experiences, I was the registrar for their preschool at Parrington Nursery School. I then volunteered regularly during their time at Jefferson Ave. I was often the room mom. I assisted in different ELA math centers across kindergarten through 2nd grade. Over the years, I helped at the Hoedown Mathletics, International Day, Homespun Day, and then helped co-chair the 5th grade finale in 2021. Although I'm no longer teaching in the classroom, these experiences have allowed me to feel like I'm still a part of the community.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Moritz. And first of all, again, thank all of you for coming out tonight. Thank you, Dan, and the PTSA for all the work you did in putting this together. And thank you to our students who are giving up their night to talk to us and help run this event. So we appreciate it. So I have been on the board since 2021. I was appointed by the current board to fill the spot formerly held by Tim Sliz, and I've served proudly in that role since October of last year. I like to joke that I'm the newest member to Fairport, I think, of the 3 of us. My family moved here in 2014. I like to joke that in about 20 years, I'll be considered new. But we had moved up to the Rochester area. My wife had gotten a job while I was finishing grad school. And we were trying to figure out, we were living temporarily in Farmington, figuring out where we wanted to settle down. And obviously, we knew Fairport's reputation for schools was top notch. And we came here the first summer we lived here. I'll never forget. We came to Canal Days. We parked in the village, walked around, and instantly looked at each other like, well, we're here. This is where we're living. This is home. It felt like home from that first day that we were in the village. And we moved up here in 2014, and it's been home ever since. So I can't imagine being anywhere else. I am the dad of a 6th grader at Martha Brown, who is not named Katie. And in my day job, I work at my alma mater, St. Bonaventure University, Go Bonnies. I've been working there for the past year. I took a job. I'm an associate professor, and I'm the online program director for our journalism master's program. So we have 2 master's programs that we've launched in the past year, and it's a thrill to be able to do that where you went to school. If you know Bonas, you know how much that means. I spent the previous 7 years to that teaching at SUNY Oswego in the Communication Studies department there. Since I've been on the board, I have been proud to be a founding member of the district sustainability committee. I'm a member of our finance and audit committee, and being on the board has truly, truly been an honor and a privilege so far. Thank you.
And with that, we'll turn over the time to our students to ask the remaining questions.
I'm Aiden Sachs, and I'm a senior this year. And for the first question, it is, what motivated you to seek a position on the school board? And the order will be Jan, then Brian, then Pat.
Thank you, Aiden. Thank you for the question. As both a mom and a teacher, I know that our children are at the heart of all that we do as not only educators, but as parents. I truly believe that it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes all of us to come together to support our Fairport students on their path to tomorrow. If you'll ask my husband, he would tell you that over the last few years, I've been searching a bit, looking for an impactful way to use my voice to make a difference. I absolutely love my work in teaching, and I love to continue to reimagine how I can give back to the profession that has given me so much. I've been inspired by so many friends who have dedicated so much time and energy to different passions. I have friends who are writers, do great work in sustainability, work with substance abuse, and even politics, and I was inspired to do the same. But what was my passion? And it is certainly education. I love our community, and I want to be part of the solution of moving our district forward in a positive direction. I meant it when I said recently that when you spend enough time sitting at school concerts, events, open houses, hoedowns, different sports games, and passing one another at Wegmans, your friends' children start to feel like your own. That was my motivation for running, taking care of all the learners in our community.
Aiden, thanks for the question. So one of the short answers is I love being a board member, which is a weird thing to say. It's you might think, but it's a wonderful, wonderful job. It's a wonderful opportunity. It's a volunteer position. It's a lot of time with zero money, but it is very rewarding to be able to help this district. And one of my motivations for seeking a full term is to continue the work that we've been doing as a district in the months that I've been on the board and that the district's been doing over the years. You know, the world is changing, and Fairport itself is changing. And it's our responsibility as a district, as educators, and as a Board of Education to give you, all of you, and all the students the tools and the opportunities that they need to do to meet the world as it exists, and the world that you're going to inherit when you leave Fairport for whatever comes next. And so my motivation for serving is to help keep our district and our community and our schools moving forward.
Hi, Aiden. Thank you for the question. I'm primarily here because I have been approached by many teachers that asked me to consider running now that I'm retired and not working full time. So after about a month of really contemplating this commitment, I decided to move forward. We're in a very tumultuous time in education, and it's through no fault of our own. We've just come out of a 2-year pause on traditional classroom experiences that our students deserve. And coming back from COVID is a very multi-layered process, as most issues facing our district are. So in addition, many public schools are tasked with implementing new state mandates, changes in curriculum, a rise in mental health needs, a decline in academic performance, and just so much more. So for decades, I've spent my life in service to children and their families. I feel that my level of expertise, my background and dedication to public education is needed now more than at probably any other time as my tenure as a teacher. So my motivation is to be of help to our superintendent, his administrators, our teachers, staff, and students, to provide a knowing, common sense approach to what appears at times to be not filled with common sense at all. So, and to improve communication with all stakeholders and to guide our district through decision-making process. I'm here because I've been in the trenches. I have a unique lens through which to serve our district, and I know I can be of help should I earn a seat on the Board of Education. Thank you. Was I on time? Mm-hmm. I'm never on time.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Abby Yurden, and I am a senior, and I will be asking the second question from the community, which will be answered first by Brian, and then Pat, and finally Jan. So what would be your top 2 priorities if elected to this position?
Thanks, Abby. Only 2?
Just 2.
Okay, that's fine. So I think my top priority is improving and improving and getting better the mental health resources that are available to students, to teachers, to staff, to counselors, to everybody in the district. Especially with students, there was a Surgeon General's report that came out late last year about the mental health crisis facing our kids. And the pandemic only exacerbated it. It made it worse. And so what does that look like from a board member? It looks like providing support to our schools, providing support to our teachers and our counselors, advocating at the state and federal level from lawmakers to make sure that we can fund positions and have the money to do so. So making sure that we can advocate so we can have a full-time counselor in each building in the district. My second priority, I guess if I have to pick a second priority, it's going to be sustainability. It's a subject that's close to my heart as a member of the committee. And, it's such a great issue facing all of us, what's going on with climate change and sustainability, and moving the district forward in small steps and in big ones. So advocating for money for electric buses. There's federal money, state money, hopefully coming, and making sure that Fairport gets its fair share and is able to help convert buses electric. Thanks.
Hi, Abby. Do you have a sister, Sophie?
I do.
Tell
That's
her
my
I
little
said hi.
sister.
Okay. I'm running with a couple of priorities. I can only pick two, so these would be the ones that I would pick. So providing the best educational opportunities to all of our students, and to also listen and support families, teachers, and staff who are part of our students' lives. So how will I address these priorities is the question. There's much work that needs to be done at every grade level in order to provide opportunities that address the uniqueness of every student in our district. We must build on the good work that our dedicated staff has already accomplished while having conversations about what will make Fairport even better. Okay? As both a parent and a teacher, I know the value in actively listening to the families of our students. They know their children best, and I really feel that we need to listen to them as we consider different ideas and concerns and the decisions that we make in that regard. Lastly, I think to be an effective district, we have to support our teachers and our staff. They are the worker bees, the professionals we trust our children with all day long, every day in our district. So they deal with so much at each grade level and in every discipline. We really need to listen when they tell us what they need to do their best work daily for our students' success.
Hi, thank you. So my two priorities, and it is hard to narrow down, but my two priorities would certainly fall under engagement and education. Public education at its core is all about engaging our students. We want to engage all of our learners, and we want them to feel a purpose and a meaning. As it's also been shared by our two candidates, or all of us, mental health is a huge concern right now. And the more we can engage our students in the process of learning, the more we can help them recover from the pandemic and some of the division that I think a lot of them are feeling right now. We want to re-engage them and provide extra opportunities of connection and joy, and help them recover both emotionally and academically. By helping them recover emotionally and academically, I think we will really certainly help with the mental health component. Not only engaging our students is a priority, but engaging our teachers. We must work in tandem with our teachers. They are instrumental experts in every decision-making process. I was and still am a teacher, and I certainly know how fruitless the work is when teachers don't buy in or agree with different programs or ideas provided to them. So engagement is certainly a priority of mine. With that, and I think we'll address it later, I'll just say community, but I know I'm getting that sign. The second big priority is education. We need to continue to look at our instructional practices to ensure that we're educating with the best practices. Sorry, I know I go way over, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Alexa DeSantis and I am a junior. The next question is, what do you see as the major issues facing public education and/or our school district? Pat can answer first, followed by Brian, and finally Jan.
Hi, Alexa. Thank you for the question. I think I'm going to kind of echo some of what Jan just said. I think one of the major issues facing our district is our pandemic response. It's really been an unprecedented issue to deal with as a district until now. We know that our students, despite all of our best efforts, have lost 2 years. I see it at the college level. I teach juniors and seniors. I see it there as well. So I think we have to look at the whole child when we're formulating our response. We have to ask, what do our students need academically, socially, physically, and emotionally? We know that academically, we're going to need to scaffold their learning, differentiating our instruction to help fill in the gaps that have been created in this 2-year period. Socially, I think we need to model the simplest things in an effort to foster acceptance and friendship and conflict resolution. There's a saying in teaching that is, procedures are many, but rules are few. That holds especially true here. Teachers as models will be big over the next couple of years. Physically, I think we need to be aware of the children's need to move about freely while remaining safe and well. We can incorporate choice and breaks to help students build stamina as they go about their day. Lastly, emotionally, we have to support the after effects of masking and separation. We're going to have supports in place for dealing with anxiety and apprehension, and we need to remember that our norm is now our second graders' new. So these things require patience, staffing, and teamwork. Thank you.
Alexa, thanks for this question. It's a great one. And of the many issues, I think it could be kind of summarized for me in the long-term impact of the pandemic and of COVID-19 of the past 2 years, echoing a lot of what Pat just said. We're going to be feeling the effects of the past 2 years and of the pandemic for years and years to come. Sorry, giving feedback. And I think that, as a community, as a school district, we need to be ready for that and be prepared for that. And I think that some of the ways that we can address these issues, be they mental health, academic performance, all these things, they're critical. And so things like increased social and emotional learning, which not only helps students academically, but also will help them, in a way that helps them kind of build back that stamina, build back those soft social skills that maybe they lost or are struggling with over the past 2 years, and helping them with mental health issues, helping them with dealing with being back in a routine, being back in school. And, I think meeting students, and everybody, teachers, staff members, counselors, everybody in the school district, leading with empathy, I think is such an important part of what we can do as we move out of the past 2 years and into, as Pat was saying, the new normal, or what life is now. I think that's the biggest issue we have.
Thanks. I think the major issue that's facing public education in our school district right now actually has very little to do with what's happening inside the schools. I think it's the negative rhetoric and the false information that's pervading through social media. I think it's the conversations that are happening that's dividing communities, such as Fairport, and preventing us from moving forward. It's the false information that's turning communities and people against each other, neighbors against each other. It's turning people against teachers and holding teachers hostage to the great work that they really are able and capable of doing. I don't think it's certainly the kids. They're fine. They're great. I mean, look at the four of you. We need to look to you. What I really truly feel is in order for public education to move forward, the first and foremost thing we have to do is restore civility. We have to have some benchmarks for how we treat each other. We are our children's role models. And if we don't act like role models, no wonder we have bullying, we have substance abuse, we have suicide. We can't ask our children to act better than the way we are acting. So what I'd want to do is restore civility. We want to engage with parents regarding what we're doing in the classroom. We want to be honest and transparent. We want to acknowledge and reconcile that there's differences, but we're going to work together to solve them. Thanks. Oh, I got it. Thanks.
Hi guys, my name is Cole Gould and I am a sophomore at FHS. And my first question for you all is, do you feel that communication between board members, district administration, and parents should be improved? And if so, how do you think this could be accomplished? And the order for this one is Brian, Jan, and finally Pat.
Cole, I love this question so much. I mean, I'm a communicator. I've been my whole career has been in communications. My degrees are in communications. I teach it. So, and you know, the current board members here can tell you when I first interviewed with them about potentially being appointed, they asked, "What can we do better?" And the first word out of my mouth was communication. You know, I think that's vital. That is everything. It's how we build partnerships, and that's what the school district is. It's partnerships, and that's not everybody getting what they want. It is very much we all have a common goal, and now what can we do to work toward that goal? So should parents communication be improved? Absolutely. How do we do that? You know, I think, you know, engaging with community members in person, on social media, through email, through the phone. But also, I think, and I think it's important to do so clearly. You know, I don't know about you guys, but my head spins at some of the academic jargon at board meetings and in schools sometimes. And I think one of the things we can do as a board is to clearly communicate what we're doing, what's going on in our schools, what's not going on in our schools, which is often just as important to say. And I think that, you know, communication is the key. And I think communication can be better, and I think that communication will be better.
Hi. Communication is obviously a huge hurdle right now. I think there is a lot of misrepresentation and misunderstandings in terms of communication. I think there's a lot of communicating, there's not a lot of listening. And I think that's something that we have some work to do as a district. I will say, and maybe Brian, this is since you've been on the board, but I do think, and particularly as the pandemic started, I definitely noticed a huge uptick and more intentional attempts of the district to communicate. I don't think there was a day that went by that we didn't get a notification from the district. And so I appreciate that. I think they've asked for a lot of our input, the surveys. We've been surveyed quite a bit. And I think that's good. I think it's good as long as those surveys are being used, and I do think they are. I appreciate them asking for our input. I think the way they handled, I felt that so much of the decisions during the pandemic, they were asking for our input as parents, and they took an account. Yes, we can always be better communicators. We can always be better listeners, and that's the work that we can do together in partnership. I think we as board members, I think our district and our teachers all have a responsibility in continuing to be open and transparent and honest.
Hi, Cole. I think communication is key. Having been a teacher for the number of years that I have, unless you can communicate with every stakeholder, things don't get done. So I know how important it is to have open lines of communication. The FEA, our union, is the conduit through which teachers' issues can be brought to the table. Therefore, I think it's really important for the board to be open to learning about those topics from the union president, whether that be through a monthly memo or a joint session with the board and superintendent. Okay, while email is efficient for an efficient way for the community to contact board members, I think being able to physically sit on committees as they do and listen to what experts in the field, our teachers, have to say is critical. I also know that it's a superintendent's job to run the district to the best of his ability, and that the board is tasked to support Brett in that work. As far as parent involvement goes, I am a huge proponent of working with parents. For my entire career, I had wonderful parent volunteers who came into my classroom twice a day, every day. It was a true partnership in education, and I believe that parents are the best experts when it comes to their children, and that needs to be honored, not minimized. In view of the controversial parts of the New York State framework, I think that lines of communication become even more important so that everybody understands what's happening and has a say in the process. I know that sometimes that's not a popular view, but that is how I feel about it, and something that I think really needs to be considered. Thank you.
Okay, and for the next question, the orders could be Jan, then Pat, then Brian. And it is, do you feel parents need more input and oversight in the or in our schools? Why or why not?
Okay. Thank you. I read that question, and I think the first word that comes to my mind is trust. And when, input, yes. Input, absolutely. I think parents are usually fairly welcome to the input of the families. Did I say teachers? I think teachers are always very welcome to the input of families. I think they are always reaching out, wanting to know, what can I do for your child? I don't think a week goes by that we're not asked to volunteer, to help out, to work on different committees, to attend board meetings, budget meetings, to help out at hoedowns or field days or teacher appreciation week. So I do certainly think our district and our schools do quite a bit to ask for the input of our community. And I think we have been very open, or our district has been very open to bringing families in. Oversight, that worries me. And I don't mean worries me, but to me, when they say oversight, that's a lack of trust. That means parents aren't trusting what's going on in the classrooms. And our teachers work so hard. They deserve the trust to do their job and to do it well. I can't stress this enough. Teachers owe it to the families of their students to build positive and open relationships so that the parents and caregivers know that they can trust and honor all the great work that is going on in the classrooms, so they don't feel the need to oversee.
I am not worried by the word oversight, because I think as a parent, we are always watching over our children and what's in their best interest. So I do agree with Jan and I'm sure Brian that the parents really need to have input into what their children are being taught. I know back when I taught fourth grade not too long ago, when there was a lesson that was coming up that was something that, like on the puberty lesson, there was a permission slip that went home to the parents, and they could choose to either have their child take part, or if it was something they wanted to handle at home, they were given that opportunity. How they felt about it was respected, and I think that's something we should continue. Now, that's not saying that we are exempt from in complying with the mandates come down from New York State. Of course we have to do that, but I don't think that a parent should have no say in the lessons that are mandated by the state that their child has to take part in. So I do feel that parents should have input and oversight in some of these areas. Now, I also feel that if the parents are asking for a meeting with administration, I think that should be honored as well. They meet with teachers, but maybe it's a bigger issue, and they need to be able to take that to the administrative level. I think that should also be honored. I'm sure it is, but it's something that I think is important to continue.
So I'm going to echo a lot of what Pat and Jen have said. I mean, I think parents are critical stakeholders in the district and in education. I don't particularly see that as a controversial statement. I think everyone in this room would agree parents should be play a role in their kids' education and know what's going on in the district. And I think that's vital to what we do as a district. And I do think there are plenty of places already in place for parent input and for parent taking part. There PTA, where I was active, and PTSA at the high school, and great organizations putting on events, such as this. Kathy Ronzinski is here. I would come into, when my daughter had her at Dudley, I would come into her room and read, I think weekly. I've never known a teacher to say no when a parent wants to come and volunteer or to help out with a class or help out with a lesson or help out with coming to lunch or anything. I think, it's very welcoming. And as far as oversight, I mean, on one level, that's what you're all here for. The oversight is the election of the Board of Education. Almost forgot what I do. But the Board of, but that oversight is important. And, I think parents have input, as all taxpayers do in that. And I think that it's an appropriate level, but parents are stakeholders and they should be a part of the process.
Sorry, I keep doing that. No.
The following question will be answered first by Pat, then by Jan, and finally Brian. So, what is your understanding of culturally responsive, sustainable education, and how do you feel about the district's implementation of it?
Great question. When the district states that CRT is not in the classroom, they are technically correct, if not wholly accurate in that. It is apparent that elements of CRT are embedded in the CRSE framework, and that's common knowledge, that's fine. With that said, if we break the 4 tenets of the framework down, affirming racial, linguistic, and cultural identities, preparing students for rigor and independent learning, developing students' abilities to connect across lines of difference, and elevating historically marginalized voices and empowering students as agents of social change, we see that some of what is stated has been employed for many years by our dedicated teachers within child-centered learning environment. So I say this with confidence because a teacher's heart is already one that affirms, prepares, develops, and elevates one's students. It's what we do on a day-to-day basis. So in the primary and upper elementary grades, K-5, our focus has been to foster acceptance, empathy, tolerance, and respect. That's true for middle school and high school as well. So for the students, how we incorporate these basic principles of CRSE at each grade level is what I think needs careful and thoughtful consideration. So the team that works on crafting lessons and reviewing materials needs to be inclusive, with each grade level represented and each viewpoint honored. In addition, as a board member, I would be able to contribute to the process and to discuss the final product before implementing the curriculum. That's an asset that I bring to this effort. Thank you.
So first and foremost, I cannot say this enough, but the cultural responsive framework really are best teaching practices. And to be quite honest, teachers have been doing the work for decades. For as long as I've known teachers, and long as I've been in the classroom, either as a student or as a teacher myself, teachers do everything they can to create a welcoming and affirming environment. They ensure rigorous instruction. They foster inclusive curriculum, and we as a district want to provide the professional development to support them in their work. Those are the 4 tenets. We're just now being more intentional about the work. We're putting it in writing, and we're going deeper. We're also, I think, expanding our definition of inclusion. We are all students in this process right now. We are all learning. And there might be bumps in the road. There may be things that we don't do perfectly. We may realize that a book that we had at 1st grade really belongs at 3rd grade, and that's what these conversations are all about. It's all about working with our teachers to make sure that the work we're doing is appropriate and is student-centered. I think the biggest fallacy around cultural responsive sustaining framework is that it somehow dilutes learning, and I want to make sure that this is not further from the truth. We want to make sure it only actually strengthens learning. I'll stop there. I'm going to see that sheet in my sleep tonight.
Abby, thanks for asking this question. Obviously, this is a big topic around the district all year, even before, dating back to before I was on the board. And what Jan and Pat have said is I can't improve on it, or I don't want to repeat them. But I think what it comes down to for me, when you hear about the framework and you hear about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I read something recently by author Terrence Lester, which really stuck with me. So if I may, all this work, the framework, DEI, the goal is belonging. It's not diversity, it's not equity, it's not inclusion, it's fostering a sense of belonging. And his quote is that this place is better because you are here and you are free to take up space. And at the core, I think that's what the goal of the framework is to do, is to meet students where they are, to affirm them, to welcome them, to celebrate all of our differences, and to build a positive learning environment. And that's how the district's implemented it You know, as Jan was saying, you know, these are best teaching practices. When the district had 3 or 4 open forums about the framework in the fall, and they were well attended. They were contentious at times, but I think good, healthy debate and conversations about them. And I think that what you saw was we're doing all of this already in Fairport. We may not call it this framework, but we're doing it already. These are the best teaching practices, and we need to continue to do that.
The following question will be answered first by Jan, then Brian, and finally Pat. The CRS framework developed by the New York State Education Department defines gender as a broad spectrum between masculinities and femininities. Can you please describe whether and how you believe that teachers should address this topic with young students in kindergarten through 2nd grade?
Okay, so actually the first thing I want to do, just as myself, is to check that definition. I'm going to imagine it's correct. But I think, first of all, the conversations that kindergarten and 2nd grade teachers are having with their students about this topic are so far from the negative false narratives that many people think are happening. Kindergarten teachers are teaching their children to respect and to be kind and to include somebody in their circle, to let someone borrow the green crayon when theirs is broken. That's what kindergarten teachers are doing. They are teaching children about safe spaces, that we all have a bubble space, that we respect each other, that we don't touch each other when we don't touch one another. And that is, you know, we're teaching them the basics of consent. Sorry, that wasn't worded too well. So what I think teachers are doing in kindergarten through 2nd grade is, you know, they're reading wonderful books about different types of families, different types of interests. They are breaking down stereotypes that boys can wear pink, that a girl can be out there playing tag. You know, one of the favorite examples is that when someone comes in and says, you know, I need 2 strong boys to come with this table, they say, guess what? I've got 2 great girls right here who can help it. So I really, truly think that the work of the kindergarten and 2nd grade teachers is creating an inclusive look at what our children, who they are and what they can do.
Thank you for this question. It is a challenging one. And I think that, you know, one of the things that makes Fairport stand out as a district is our health curriculum throughout K-12. I think it's very important. And I do know that a lot of the health curriculum is driven through state learning standards and driven at a state level. And so I guess it comes down for me on this question. I come back to the idea of what Jan was saying earlier, and that's trust, and trusting our teachers, and that both the curriculum that they have and have put in place, the standards from New York State, and their own experiences. I trust that any topic in class, whether it's the spectrum of gender or anything, is handled at an age-appropriate level. And I think I have yet to hear solid evidence that it is not happening, whether this or on anything else in Fairport. And so it's trusting teachers, and I do believe everything is handled at an age-appropriate level for the students in all grades, but especially K-2.
Thanks for the question, Alexa. I think this is a really delicate issue to work on within the state mandated framework, and one that needs to be implemented in a precise and developmentally appropriate way. So again, we need to ensure that the team that will be working on crafting lessons and reviewing materials and books is inclusive, with each grade level represented and each viewpoint listened to. I can speak about an experience that I had. I took the SEED training, which is Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity Training. It's a 30-hour course that was offered to teachers, and I was really fortunate enough to take that. I enjoyed it very much. And this topic of gender education came up, and we're talking back like 2000 or 2016 when this, so it's been going on for a long time. But at that meeting, there was a big push for looking at books and stuff like that, and there was a lot of back and forth conversation about it back then. But what struck me is at the end of that training, we went to came to the high school, and there was a panel of Fairport High School students that had all sorts of gender identity. I guess you would say we're identifying in certain ways in gender-related issues. So one of the things that I asked them, because I really wanted to know, could we have done better K-5? And they said, actually, we were good K-5, but it got more difficult middle school and high school. So I agree with my campaign colleagues here that I think we are doing a good job. But I think that, people will be taking a close look. So we just need to be mindful, and we need to be thoughtful about what we're doing, K-2.
Okay, my next question is, do you believe that the current FCSD board policy regarding student gender identity is adequate? And if not, what would you change? And the order is Brian, Pat, and then Jen.
Cool, thanks for this. So I actually had to look this up to make sure I was referencing the right policy. Joyce and Mary Caitlin, if I get it wrong, just tell me later. But my understanding of the policy as it's currently written is that we strive to create a welcoming and affirming environment when it comes to gender identity and sexuality and all of that. And I agree with that. I think we can do better. I think we can do more for our students in the LGBTQ community. And frankly, if you'll indulge me for a second, I think the demonization of especially students in the LGBT community, but also staff members, teachers, community members, allies, is disgusting. And I think that what I would change, I would want to make it stronger. These are kids who are in groups where they have report higher numbers across the board of mental health issues, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. We need to protect our kids. We need to keep our kids alive. That's number one. And so I would like to see us potentially make the anti-bullying policies around this stronger. And I think anything that we can do to keep kids safe and respect who they are and respect them that's our job as adults, not just as board members, not just as teachers or people in the school district. As grown-ups, that's our moral responsibility to our kids.
Sorry.
Pat,
Pat, I'm sorry.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Pat, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Thanks for this question. It's a great question, and I feel so much better because I wasn't sure what the policy was, and you're on the board, and you didn't know either. So I guess the first thing we would do would be make sure that everybody knows what the policy is. Okay, that'd be the first thing. Secondly, I agree with Brian. Having a safe, welcoming environment for all students is an absolute must, and I think we do a great job of that in Fairport, truly. We do have a zero tolerance policy. We do have anti-bullying policies, but how those are actually followed through on, I think, is something to take a look at each building level, and that it's the same in each building, if that makes sense, because we have so many buildings. We want to make sure that our policies are the same across the board. I think that our students need to know that we care, regardless of their height, their weight, their sexual orientation, whatever it might be. Children are children, and we are here, should be as teachers, with full acceptance of them as human beings. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go 3 for 3 that all 3 of us did not actually know what the board policy on student gender identity is.
There are a lot of policies.
So I don't want this to look like a cop-out, but I think how we will know if it's adequate or not is by asking the students themselves. I think they will let us know if it's adequate. We can write all the words in the world as well that sound wonderful, but if they're not put into action, then they're just words on paper. What we need to make sure is that we are authentically and intentionally supporting all of our students. And this question is particularly with gender identity. So we need to make sure that we are providing social support and acceptance from adults and peers in classrooms, in the halls, at recess, on social media, inside and outside of school. We need to make sure that we are providing affirming spaces and activities. It is the rejection and lack of social support that leads children to depression, mental illness, and suicide. It is the second most common it's the second leading cause of death for the LGBTQ community is suicide. We need to make sure that our policies and practices are not just words, but they're actions. That is a simple thing like using the correct pronoun.
Okay, for the next question, the orders could be Pat, Brian, and then Jan. And the question is, please describe what you feel is the appropriate process for reviewing and or requesting removal of books from the school library or classroom when concerns are expressed as a parent or a group of parents.
Thank you. I actually have experience with this question because when I was at Northside, my fourth grade classroom, there was a book that was in the teacher book room that you could use for your small reading groups. And sometimes it's difficult when you have a group of 9-year-olds and they're reading at an 8th grade level to find books that you would consider to be appropriate. I had used the book many, many times until this one year, and a parent actually was concerned about 2 lines in this one chapter of the book. And so there is a process in place. The parent was able to utilize that process. It went through a whole review board, and then it was determined that the book was in fact okay to stay on the shelf. So it was put back in the book room for teachers to use. But the lesson that I learned with that was, I thought, very important. And it doesn't matter if you've taught for 5 years, 20 years, or 25 years. You can always learn something and take something away from an experience. So what I learned there is that if there is a book that you're not sure about how it's going to be viewed by the parents that you're working with, send the book home ahead of time. Get their input ahead of time. Parents will tell you how they feel about something, and then you can work together to decide, okay, maybe I'll choose something else that everybody will be comfortable with. So that'd be my thought on that.
I love this question. There we go. Love this question too. I think as Pat was saying, we do have a process in place. There's a board policy for review, and I guess to strictly answer the question, I think it is appropriate. It goes to teacher, then it goes to principal, then a committee, and then eventually maybe the superintendent, and it goes on and up the chain of command. And I think that is appropriate. I do know one teacher at the high school recently, I'm blanking on the name, please forgive me, assigned a book that he knew might cause some concern among parents. And so he sent an email to parents and with a list of resources, I believe, that the district has on its website. And I think that's the point we get to, right? Communication is the key. It leads to a conversation. Whatever the outcome of it is, I am not generally in favor of removing books, my own personal thing, but the conversation is important, right? And so, you hear talk in the district about restorative circles and restorative practices, and all that means is having a conversation where you sit down with the people, you hear their concerns, you talk it out, and you again, you're partners. It's building that partnership, and so I think that those conversations are the important part of this process.
Such an important question and topic. I think, to reiterate kind of a few questions back, it gets back to trust. It gets back to the relationship that a teacher forms with families and parents to build respect and trust in that partnership. And for parents to know that the teacher, the librarian, the school has the very, very best interests of that child at heart. As both my colleagues up here, mentioned, there is a process. Parents can come to teachers and say, I just don't really understand why you had to use that book. And the teacher will share This is what I wanted the students to get out of this. This is how I taught it. This is my plan. Yes, sometimes we can send home an email, say, just to let you know, we're going to be talking about this topic. This is the book. This is why we're reading it. This is how I plan. I know there might be sensitivity. My hope is that before that conversation would ever come to be, the teacher in the school has already built a wonderful relationship with the families that is based on trust, so that I know that when you are reading about a topic that, gee, as a mom, maybe I feel a little uncomfortable about, I know the expertise. I know that teacher. I know that they're going to handle it with great sensitivity. I will say that I'm very hard pressed to imagine ever needing to ban a book.
Okay, this next question will be answered first by Brian, then Jan, and finally Pat. So, what lessons have you learned from the pandemic and its impact on our school community?
Well, first of all, the first thing I learned is you guys, the students, are incredible. You are resilient, you are positive, you are everything that's good about Fairport. We are all going to be working for you guys someday. You are incredible. I learned that our teachers are rock stars. You know, to go through the disruption in classroom, the multiple modalities of 2020 and 2021, all the issues with bringing kids back full-time in 2020 in this year, and all the challenges that that's brought. If I had a hat, I'd take it off to the teachers. They're so good, and they're so dedicated, and they work so hard, and they care so much about our kids. You know, I'm going to come back to a word I said earlier, and when I think of kind of moving forward and out of the pandemic and everything that's happened in the past 2 years, in the political environment and the social environment and all of that, I'm sorry I keep doing that. I come back to empathy. You know, I think that to coming out of the last 2 years and going forward, I think having empathy and leading with empathy as school leaders, as future leaders, as teachers, I think it all starts from there. It all has to start from there. And I think that coming out of this time with a greater concern for the greater good and greater empathy.
Three lessons come to mind from the pandemic. Number one is the inequities among our children, urban, rural, and suburban. The inequities amongst different populations was on a very sad full display. And we saw some students do okay, and they made it through. And we saw some students have such an incredibly difficult time through absolutely no fault of their own, despite all of our best intentions. So I think the inequality is the first thing. I think the second thing is whether it's clearly the pandemic or the political nature, we have a lot of division. It led to a very divisive world, country, and community and district. We have to get past that. We have to somehow reconcile our differences for the betterment of our children. I think those two in combination, the greatest lesson is that our mental health is really struggling. The mental health of our children, the mental health of our teachers and our children. Those are three pieces that we need to learn and think about how we can reconcile those in order to move forward.
I think that the biggest lessons that I learned, having taught through the pandemic, but at the college level and having subbed through the pandemic here in Fairport, is I would echo what Brian said. We have amazing students. We have amazing faculty. We have amazing staff. We have amazing administrators in this district. And they, you'll hear all the time, kids are flexible, kids adapt. They do. But this is something that our kids have never experienced before. So I think that the lesson that I learned was to lead with confidence, to allay fear for our students. I think that being able to lean on members of your faculty community has been very important and very uplifting for the teachers involved. And, you know, I also think the parents did a fantastic job becoming teachers in the blink of an eye. And I think they should also be acknowledged for their role in this whole pandemic nightmare that we've been through. I think that, as Jan said, it really highlighted different areas of need that maybe we didn't know before the pandemic existed, so things to work on. And like I said, you know, we take what we don't know, we learn from what happens, and we move forward to make it better the next time around. Thank you.
I believe that the sounds from the shuffling around on the table will be alleviated if everybody turns their mic off unless they're talking.
This next question will be answered first by Jan, then Pat, and finally Brian. What are your thoughts on Fairport's standing compared to neighboring districts, specifically in terms of performance on standardized tests and published rankings? Should this be a focus of the district? If so, what are the key factors you think could drive further improvement?
Okay. Yeah, those rankings just came out a few days ago, didn't they? Like, it's like they knew Meet the Candidates night is coming. You know, we celebrate when we're high, right? We get very excited when we're number 1 or number 8, number 5. And when we slip, we have to ask why. And we have to evaluate and see what's happening and make pivots. Standardized tests can be taken with a grain of salt. They are one measure of a child. It doesn't always account for who's respectful and who's a good friend and who's a great leader, who's a wonderful public speaker, who's an actor, an actress, an athlete. Who tried hard. Doesn't always take into account who had breakfast and who didn't have breakfast. It doesn't take into account whose parents made sure that they were in bed at 8:30 the night before, or which kid was going to bed at 11. That's what standardized tests don't measure. But let's still look at what we can do. So again, I already orange. Sorry. Again, my apologies. So yes, we can do better. We can look at our curriculums. We can look at our literacy. That is actually, and I know it's something going to be coming up, I do want to look at our literacy. Yes, we do need to look at our academics. I'll end there. Sorry. My apologies.
Okay, so as is the case of most districts, there's always room for improvement, and we all know that we can't test prep our way to better scores, right? It's a snapshot. We have one day to get that snapshot taken. So I do think we've made a lot of progress in focusing on academics, but there's a lot more work that we can do. So at the elementary level, our K-5 math program is a great example. It's been adapted through a very thoughtful process with recommended resources and training for our teachers to help with implementation. So now we start looking at language arts, and we are looking at English language arts, very critical area for certain. So there was supposed to be training this year, but with the pandemic and the sub shortage, that didn't happen. So we look to next year to kind of make that up. But the types of reading skills that need to be explicitly taught K-3 are phonemic awareness skills, phonics skills, word identification skills, word learning skills, and comprehension skills. And these skills are not the same as strategies. Strategies are learned, skills are automatic. So we need work in that area. And so looking at a program that will address that need is what, and the training that goes with that and the implementation is what the district is being tasked with right now. So it isn't just about resources, but the quality of the resources and how the resources are used. Now, in addition, we need to look at student growth, and documenting student growth is a lot easier at the elementary level than it is at middle and high school. So I think we need to take a more individualized approach based on a variety of factors that children are dealing with. And those factors will be specific to each student's circumstances, with the end goal being student success. So we can look at other districts and see what they're doing, get ideas, have, again, that panel or that team working together to improve things for our middle and high schoolers. Ongoing process. Thank you.
So first of all, on the rankings that just came out, I will say that I'm very proud that Fairport is a top 10 high school. Fairport High School is a top 10 high school in the country, and that a top 13% high school in the, I think that's right, in the state. I think that's a credit to our district. That's a credit to Mr. Clark and his team here, and a credit to our students. Certainly, there's always room for improvement, and we're always looking for ways to get better. I think standardized tests and the published rankings, they're an important data point, but they're just one data point. And I think we look at, there are different ways to look at learning. Is a student an engaged learner? Are they excited to come to school? Are they active participants and stuff like that? In terms of academics, to echo what Pat said, I know from firsthand experience with my daughter, Math Expressions, and just how successful that has been, and how administration and teachers have embraced that, and what the ELA one looks like. I know the district's looking at different options and different ideas on that, and that's certainly a focus and something that we want to do going forward. And along with driving further improvement, I think, I come back to the social emotional learning aspect of it. The research is clear. Social emotional learning programs raise academic success 11 percentile points. That is huge, and especially coming out of the time that we're in with the pandemic. It'll help kids, and it'll help them academically as well.
Okay, my final question for you guys for the night is, some parents in the community have expressed that their children are not being served sufficiently by the district's current special education programs. What are your thoughts on the current state of special education in our district? And it should be answered by Pat, then Jan, and finally Brian.
Thank you, Cole. Well, we have an early intervention, response to intervention process already in place, and it's intent on being able to access supports at the earliest age, because that's critical, early intervention. I think one of the considerations that might be fueling some of the parental concerns is the time frame around which this is implemented. So there's 3 tiers to this RTI, and the first tier would be classroom teacher delivers services, documents, reports on student progress. Tier 2 is where the specialists come in, a reading and math specialists, and then they deliver services in addition and document student progress. And then the third tier is intensive interventions. And so the provider meets with students more frequently in smaller groups, sometimes in a one-on-one scenario, and then documents student progress. The toughest thing to this approach, and it's a good approach, is the time frame, because each strategy that a teacher is given when they go to this RTI team meeting is a strategy that they then watch and document for 6 weeks. And if it doesn't work, then you go back and try something new, another 6 weeks, and so on. So you can see those big chunks of time kind of slip away. So I'm not sure if that's what's fueling the parental concerns. I think that's a conversation to have, because everything that's in place certainly is up for, modification as we need for the best interest of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Cole. At a recent meet and greet, 2 parents shared with me quite a few concerns about special education, and it was nothing involving teachers, the great work they're doing. It was more of the process, as Pat alluded to. It was more about navigating the process, feeling very isolated, feeling alone, having a lot of questions that went unanswered, wishing that there was more support in that process. There was also a lot of expression of wishing that, we do great work around students with learning disabilities, speech disorders, other type of disabilities, but these 2 parents in particular were talking more about students with behavioral needs. and on the autism spectrum. And they really mentioned, and they seemed to, they really suggested that this was a wider issue than I was truly aware of. So it prompted me to reach out to the group of families of children with special needs. And I'm really excited that actually tomorrow and next week, again, I'm going to be meeting with more parents to hear their concerns. Because again, I don't think it was about teaching. I don't think it was about the teachers. It was more of what are the programs that we have available for our children so that we can do less sending out to other districts or other schools, but keeping them in district and giving them the best education possible.
Cole, great job tonight, by the way. So this is admittedly a topic that I'm learning a lot about in my time on the board. My colleague Erica Bellows-Pacer is my go-to when I have questions or get questions about special ed, and that's an important part, I think, of being on the board, right? We all have different expertise. We all bring different knowledge to the table, and so being able to lean on colleagues and discuss and get help and learn stuff when I've needed has been invaluable. And I do know that a lot of what the district does in this area is dictated by New York State and at the state level. And I do, the law is all students must get a free, appropriate public education. You maybe have heard of FAPE. That's, I believe, federal law. Anyway, that is we have to do that. That's our charge as a district. And every situation is district, and our goal as a district is to provide what each individual needs. And there are reviews annually to make sure that if the needs can't be provided, to figure out a way to provide them or to figure out how to do that. That's kind of at a level that is not directly under a Board of Education purview. That's much more on that day-to-day that we task Superintendent Provenzano and our staff to do, but making sure that our ship is pointed in the right direction when it comes to special education, I think, is the important thing to do as a board member.
Okay, so for my last question, it is similar to the last question. Some parents have expressed dissatisfaction in the district's enrichment programs. What would you say to these parents who feel their children are not being challenged to their full potential?
I think it's me first.
Sorry, the order is Jan, Brian, then Pat.
Okay. It's interesting. I'm not too surprised that we have these concerns at these two different, the ends of our spectrum. We need to make sure that not only are we supporting our students of academic need, but we need to make sure that we're supporting and providing avenues of enrichment for all of our students, every child. In the great words of, every teacher who stands up in front at open house says all our children are gifted. It is our work as teachers to make sure that we are showcasing those strengths. But there are several things that we can make sure that we're doing. We can make sure that in classrooms we are providing a great array of literature, types of books. We are providing different levels of math curriculum, and actually I think our math curriculum right now is really wonderful. I didn't get a chance to highlight that. I'm excited that we're in a really great direction with math. But we can make sure that in our classrooms we're differentiating instruction. We're providing multiple different means of engagement. We are providing different levels of teaching so that those students are able to be enriched right in the classroom. I also know that I'm excited, I believe in our budget, we are allocating gifted and talented teachers at the elementary level, if I'm not mistaken. I do think that's going to allow for more, individualized instruction for students. I would hope that all students get to take advantage of that. I also know that the master schedule should also allow more of an activity period at the end of the day. A lot of schools call it a what I need time. So during that time, students could potentially get whether it's special support services or enrichment services.
Aiden, great job tonight. And this is a topic that comes up often that we hear as a board. And I do think that at the core of it is the issue of equity. I think that this is one of the kind of driving forces behind the current the structure of the enrichment programs, and it's a way that diversity, equity, and inclusion is being implemented. Where enrichment benefits all students, and enrichment programs benefit every kid, and so to give every kid those opportunities is what's important. One example that I can think of is the Hack Lab at Northside. And the work that Travis Wood and now Erica McDermott have done in that is spectacular and enriching, to use the term. And so I think that is, I think that's a driving force behind it. And what I would say to the parent is, again, those conversations, you're listening to them, you're talking to them, you're hearing them. But I think that, that emphasis on equity and making sure that, as a public school, we're responsible for every kid and making sure that every kid has all the opportunities that they could possibly get, and that enrichment programs benefit every kid.
Well, I agree with what's being said here. We did have an enrichment program years ago called the Gifted and Talented Program, and it was in place. And then the district decided, for whatever reasons, I'm really not sure, to dissolve it. And parents were really upset by that, and understandably so. And now, as I understand it, we're reinstating enrichment at the elementary level by hiring a STEAM/enrichment teacher for each elementary building. And I think that's a great start, but it's going to need to be a work in progress and closely monitored for effectiveness. I think it's going to depend on how many students are going to need to be serviced or that we want to service in the district. And if it's all of them in each elementary building, that's a huge task. So that's going to be a whole scheduling sort of thing, nightmare issue, but certainly something that we need to look at seriously. We need to be sure it's consistent between buildings, and again, that it becomes a resource issue. Do you need more teachers at one building? Do we have a pool of specialists that can be moved around between buildings as student need arises? At the high school, I know the district's looking at AP classes and providing access to all students, which I think is great. But I think this too needs to be thoughtfully monitored going forward to make sure that it looks good on paper and is also good for the kids, and that they are all feeling good and successful. At first glance, when I heard that, my question was, I wonder how the trickle-up effect is going to be about that at the college level. Are the colleges going to be changing what's an acceptable score, a 3, 4, 5, for students to receive credit? So how do we ensure that all students succeed and that the teachers have the resources that make success attainable for those students? So I think we need to move ahead thoughtfully. I think it's a must that we must tread carefully, because our children are our most precious commodity. We have to be sure we're not doing any harm and that we're doing only good with them. Thank you.
My final question of the night will be answered by Brian first, and then Pat, and then Jan. And it is: bullying, and now cyberbullying, is a persistent part of our society, impacting families, administrations, and especially students. How do you view your role as a school board member in listening to these community members and students and addressing their concerns?
Abby, great job tonight. And oh my God, this is such an important issue. As my daughter's in middle school, she's in 6th grade, and it's just that at the beginning of that, I think this worries a lot of parents and community members, but especially parents of younger kids. How do I view my role as a board member in listening? Well, first of all, that word is in your question: listening and having those conversations and hearing talking to students. What are you struggling with? What is actually happening? What are the platforms that are being used? How are they being used? Listen to teachers, our administrators, everybody involved, parents, of course. And and addressing their concerns. I think one thing the district has done well has had workshops on digital drama and other types of workshops to kind of help teach parents and kind of help us understand social media in ways to help our kids navigate that world. I think one other thing that as a board member we can do, as board members, we can do is really, again, examining our policies. Policy is such an important job of what we do as a board, at the Board of Education level, and making sure that our bullying policies or cyberbullying policies, that they're kept up to date, that they're enforceable through regulations, and that again, this is such an important topic and such a changing topic that I think we need to be flexible and we need to listen.
I agree. I mean, I think bullying and cyberbullying is just, kids can't escape it. It's everywhere. And my children are older and grown and didn't really experience this, but I think we're all experiencing it just on our run for the Board of Education, right? Something I had never experienced before in my life. And so opened my eyes to what the kids are going through. So I think in two-part, we have to make sure our policy is in place, and our policies are enforced, and that our policies are well expressed to the families. I think there also needs to be some parent education, because children learn what they live. So if they are seeing this sort of behavior as acceptable at home, then they're probably going to feel it's acceptable for them as well. So I think that parent education, consistent policies, and student education, the process also. It goes along with that teaching of empathy, which we do from kindergarten on. So maybe we need to look at that again, and maybe we need to look at that at each grade level, and maybe in a different format, but make sure it's done, make sure every student takes part in that.
Pat, I think you nailed it on the head when you said children learn what they live. We are their role models. We have to lead by example. How can I tell my child not to use her phone when mine is constantly in my hand, right? We must lead by example. And we need to be I think as board members, the leading voice in this, in working against cyberbullying in school and out of school. What I would want to do is, continue to work to get our kids, be the leading voice in that conversation. We want to empower them to lead the conversation about bullying. We want to get them face-to-face, active, and involved in our district as much as possible. The kids who are, and I don't want to overgeneralize this or stereotype anything, but we have such amazing activities in this district. The more that our kids are involved with Odyssey of the Mind, robotics, lacrosse, chess club, anything, softball, the more they're going to build positive connections with one another. I don't mean to simplify it. It's not a simple issue. But I think the more that we build positive connections between our students, we can continue to work on it. But it's a hard issue.
The last question of the night will be answered first by Pat, then Brian, and finally Jan. In a time of increased polarization in our society, it is important to be able to work with others and be open to new ideas. Can you share a time that you changed your mind on an important topic in response to new information or perspectives?
Yeah, I have one particular example that comes to mind. I had taught in the district for years and had always had children that were in the urban suburban program come into my classroom. And I really didn't know that much about the program, how it worked, or how kids were accepted into that program and were able to come here to Fairport for school. But I had a situation with a student in my class who I had one child, there was an older child and a younger child that wasn't here at Fairport yet. And I got a call from the child's mother, and she was extremely upset because the older child in the other building was starting to have behavioral issues. The student in my building was doing okay, but because of the younger student's grade point average combined with the behavioral issues going on with the older child, they were now saying the younger child couldn't come. And she came to me and she said, I can't tell two of my children they can't be here and allow one to come. And so I really had to educate myself. I really had to advocate for this family and change my thought process on, you know, what does this really mean to the children in my classroom that are in that program? And so I was happy to say that going to work on her behalf, advocating for that family, was met with some success, and that her youngest child actually ended up coming to my classroom 2 years later, which was a wonderful thing. So I think educating ourselves as teachers on these issues that maybe we're not as familiar with is a step in the right direction.
Alexa, great job tonight. I have an 11-year-old daughter, so I'm given many chances to change my mind on a daily basis. But I don't know if this will qualify as an important topic, but it's the first thing that comes to mind with this question, and it goes back to my teaching experience when I was teaching in person at Oswego. One of the things that I would always do weekly in my journalism classes I would give news quizzes. I thought it was important that student journalists know what's going on in the world and what's going on online and all that. And my students came to me after a couple of years. I was really hardcore about it. It was really important to me. And they said, "Can we stop with the news quizzes?" I'm like, "No." "Wait, why?" And I was lucky enough to teach older students, so I had a pretty good relationship with them, less formal than you have with your teachers. And they said, it's kind of a waste of our time. We just look up the answers on Google and then we go on with it. I'm like, huh, okay. So I moved away from the news quizzes. And it's such a little thing. It's not a grand topic. It's not a grand important issue. But being able to listen, being able to willing to work with people, and listen to what they have to say and hear their concerns, and then that flexibility to be willing to say, "Oh, yeah, we don't need to do this. This isn't this hard-held belief that I thought I had is kind of built faultily." And so I think that willingness and to, again, conversation, hear what they have to say, talk it through, and then try something new. So.
Yeah, we are so polarized right now. And I think if my overarching priority as a board member, it would be in 3 years, if I had the honor to be sitting here again, we would be reminiscing of how we used to talk about the polarization and division, and to know that we had overcome that. So that's kind of my first piece. I hope I have put it out there to the community that I'm very willing to engage in different ideas. I have probably spent more time talking with people who disagree with me, and I know are not going to vote for me if I was the only person on the ballot, but I've listened. I am open. I want to reconcile some of our differences. I understand that there's people who don't feel as comfortable with topics in our classrooms as I do, and maybe some of our teachers. I'm willing to work on those. I think we can find a middle ground. I think we can find compromise. One topic in particular that does come to mind is the big topic of public comments at board meetings. To me, honestly, it wasn't a huge issue. I didn't see the need for them to be publicized. I actually had several reasons why I did not think they should be publicized. But I'll be honest, I've talked to a lot of people, and that is something that's very important to them for many reasons. That is something that I now realize other people value, and I'm willing to listen to that.
Take a deep breath. Okay, we did it. We've made it through the formal questions section of the event tonight. I think we've managed to cram 3 or 4 hours worth of nuanced conversation into 90-second segments. It's not easy to do. Very, very well done. Thank you. Let's take a moment to thank our candidates here tonight and all the preparation that they've done. And also, we cheated a little bit with the students tonight because these students are all members. Correct me if I'm wrong. Our students are all members of our Model UN here at Fairport, correct? Notice how polished they are up here? That's right. Okay. So I'd like to invite now in this order, Jan, and then Brian, and then Pat, 1 minute each for a closing statement.
I'm going to just close by saying thank you. Thank you to the community of Fairport, to the teachers, and to our neighbors and our friends who have supported us and asked some really hard questions and have pushed us to make us think about where we stand. Students, you're the reason we're doing this. Thank you for your hard work and your tenacity and for being the role models that we can watch. You have 3 really great candidates this year. It's been said time and time again, this is a no-lose situation for Fairport. You're gonna have a professor, a teacher of higher ed on the board that shows the commitment that we as educators are to education. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you. I apologize for my mic issues up here. If that doesn't tell you I'm not perfect, I don't know what does. So, but thank you, everybody.
Again, thank you to Dan and to the PTSA for the work in putting this together. And I want to say thank you to Pat and to Jan for their willingness to run for the Board of Education. This is a lot of work for a volunteer gig, and it is a lot. So I think I appreciate you running. I also want to say thank you to the current Board of Education members who gave me the great honor of putting me on the board and naming me to fill Tim Sliz's incredibly large shoes, metaphorically. Back in October, serving on the Board of Education, it's an honor and it's a privilege to be able to visit the schools once a month and to see what our teachers are doing, to talk to the students, to see them lighting up as they get on the ground and show us their robots and everything else. I am who I am. I'm clear on what I believe. I say what I say. I truly believe that our work in Fairport is just beginning, and I hope that you'll give me a chance to continue that work. And I would just urge everyone to remind them, May 17th, 6 to 9 at JP, to please vote on this and the budget.
First, I want to thank our district for sponsoring this Meet the Candidates Night, and to Dan for coordinating and hosting the event for us. Thanks also to the students. I was so happy that I got to see you and that I got to see one that I actually taught, Sister. It's kind of cool. Wish I had taught all of you. You're really exceptional. I'm excited about all the opportunities that lie before you. I truly am. And I know that Fairport is preparing you for all the great things in your future. I also want to say thank you to everybody who came out tonight, gave up their time to be here, and for the people that are watching from home. I guess this is streamed, so we're in people's homes, which is kind of cool. I also want to say thanks to all the people who have come out to different events to talk with me face to face and tell me their stories and let me learn their concerns. It's been very insightful and very welcome to me to do that. To all the folks who placed a yard sign in their yard. I mean, the support has been incredible. And for my friends and family who've been there for me in countless other ways, I can't even begin to say. I appreciate you all so very much. I look forward to the possible opportunity to serve our district and community in the days ahead. And it's been a true pleasure to be here tonight with Jan and Brian. I get a chance to sit down with them and hear their thoughts. I wish us all the best of luck in our campaigns, and thank you very much.
All right. I'd like to echo their thanks for everyone that helped make tonight possible, from the facilities and to the support staff. Of course, thank the 4 students again, as well as the 3 of you. As has been said multiple times, please go out and vote on Tuesday, May 17th. Thank you and good night.